The story begins in 1964. At that time, Lauren was heavily pregnant, eagerly awaiting the birth of her and Ed's first child. One day, the couple stopped by an antique shop where they met the owner's daughter, Victoria. With a worried expression, Victoria revealed that something strange and unseen had been haunting her family, especially her father. She confessed that she too had begun hearing unsettling noises, and soon inexplicable events plagued their home. The terror reached its peak when, right before Victoria's eyes, her father ended his own life in a tragic and horrifying way. At that moment, Lauren, who was deeply intrigued by Victoria's story, began to look around at the antiques inside the shop. Her attention was drawn to an old mirror that seemed unusual and mysterious. When she opened and touched the antique mirror, a powerful energy surged through her body, overwhelming her with its strength. Almost instantly, Lauren was struck by intense contractions that forced her into labor. Not long after, she gave birth to their first child, a baby girl. But tragedy struck. The newborn showed no signs of life. Devastated and filled with sorrow, Lauren prayed earnestly to God, pleading for a chance to see her child live. In a miraculous moment, her prayers were answered. The baby suddenly breathed again and came back to life. Overjoyed, Lauren gave thanks to God for the miracle. The child was then given the name Judy. As Judy grew older, it became clear that she had inherited the same gift of sight that Lauren possessed. Realizing her daughter's special ability, Lauren comforted Judy by softly singing to her, a song that brought peace to both their hearts. The story then shifts to the year 1986, about 22 years later. The focus now turns to Jack and his family who lived in Pennsylvania. Jack and his wife were blessed with 4 children, and together they stayed close with the children's grandparents. On one special day, one of the children, Heather, was celebrating her birthday. To mark the occasion, her grandfather presented her with a precious gift, an antique mirror. Unbeknownst to them, this was the very same mirror that once sat in Victoria's antique shop decades earlier. The family gathered joyfully to celebrate Heather's birthday, their home filled with laughter and happiness. Jack, overjoyed, eagerly captured every moment of the celebration on video, recording the precious memories of his daughter's special day. The first sign of disturbance came during Heather's birthday celebration, when the candles on her cake suddenly went out on their own. Startled and upset, Heather grew angry, convinced that her siblings were playing a trick on her. But the strangeness did not stop there. While she was near the kitchen, the light fixture above her suddenly came crashing down, narrowly missing her and almost ending in tragedy. This chilling event marked the beginning of the horrors that would soon engulf Jack's family. The scene shifts to Ed and Lauren, who by this time had already retired and no longer wished to involve themselves in the world of the supernatural. Instead, they dedicated their days to teaching small classes for young people who were curious to hear their stories and experiences from past investigations. Among those attending the classes was Judy, who listened attentively, though many of the younger students remained skeptical of the Warrens' accounts. The true reason Ed and Lauren had chosen to step away from their dangerous work was because Ed's heart condition had grown increasingly severe. With his health in decline, they longed for peace. During one dinner, Judy excitedly told her parents that she wanted to introduce them to her boyfriend, Tony. As they all sat together at the table, Lauren suddenly grew tense. She sensed the dark and malevolent presence surrounding them. Her gaze shifted, and in that instant, she saw a spectral hand resting on Judy's back. Shocked by the vision, Lauren froze, but just as quickly as it appeared, the sinister image vanished, leaving only a chilling silence at the table. Day by day, Jack's family continued to be tormented by the unseen presence. The disturbances grew stronger, and no one in the household was spared. One evening, while Janet was in the kitchen peeling potatoes, as she was on the telephone, the cord was violently pulled into the darkened room behind her. Startled, Janet turned and carefully investigated, but found nothing waiting in the shadows. The terror soon extended to the children. Shannon, while innocently playing with her doll, witnessed something impossible. The doll lifted into the air and began to float on its own. Terrified, she slowly turned her gaze toward it. Then, in an instant, the faceless entity revealed itself, manifesting right in front of Shannon's eyes. Dinner time arrived, and Jack's family gathered at the table. Still shaken from her earlier encounter, Shannon began crying and told everyone about what had happened to her that afternoon. Yet no one at the table seemed to take her story seriously. Later that night, Heather sat in her room with Dawn, unable to shake the unease she felt. She confessed to her sister that the mirror their grandfather had given her for her birthday felt terrifying and unnatural. Dawn agreed, admitting that she too sensed something wrong about the object. Disturbed and determined, the two sisters decided the mirror had to be removed from the house. Together, under the cover of night, they carried the antique mirror to a nearby dumping site and left it behind. By the next morning, sanitation workers crushed the mirror into shreds. But the nightmare was far from over. Soon after, Dawn fell violently ill. She began vomiting uncontrollably, and to the family's horror, blood and fragments of glass spilled from her mouth. The scene then shifts to Ed, who was undergoing a medical checkup to determine the condition of his heart. The doctor's expression grew serious as he explained that Ed's heart had worsened and urged him to rest as much as possible. A second heart attack, he warned, could prove fatal. Returning home from the hospital, Ed and Lauren resumed their quiet preparations for Ed's upcoming birthday. At the same time, Judy introduced her boyfriend, Tony. Nervous and uneasy, Tony confessed to Judy that he feared Ed would underapprove of him. Judy, however, reassured him, insisting that her father would grow to accept their relationship. Later that evening, Judy returned to her room and found herself lost in memories of her childhood. But her reflection was interrupted when the sinister presence of Annabelle began to torment her. Fear consumed her until Tony appeared, entering the room just in time to comfort her. As he held Judy in his arms, trying to calm her trembling, Lauren entered the room. Seeing them together, Lauren offered a warm but knowing smile, while Judy and Tony, caught off guard, could only return her gaze with shy, embarrassed expressions. The scene then shifts to Tony, who went out to the garage to meet with Ed. Without hesitation, Ed invited him to a game of tennis. Drawing on the skills and sharpness he once had in his youth, Ed played with ease, defeating Tony effortlessly. After the match ended, Tony gathered his courage and confessed his intention to marry Judy. At first, Ed was reluctant to accept the proposal, his protective instincts making him hesitate. But at that very moment, Judy appeared, watching them closely. Not wanting to see his only daughter heartbroken, Ed softened and humbly gave his blessing. Overjoyed, Tony was overwhelmed with happiness, knowing that their relationship was now accepted. Later that evening, Father Gordon met privately with Ed and Lauren. His tone was urgent as he asked for their help in investigating a house plagued by terrifying supernatural attacks. The family he spoke of was none other than Jack's family. But despite the priest's plea, Ed and Lauren gently declined. Their days of confronting evil spirits were behind them, or so they hoped. At the same time, the attacks on Jack's family grew increasingly violent. Dawn grew frustrated with her father's refusal to believe in the terror that plagued their home, feeling abandoned in their fight against the unseen. That night, as Jack lay down to rest, he became the target himself. In the darkness, he saw a horrifying apparition closing in, its presence so dreadful that it nearly claimed his life. Meanwhile, in the living room, Heather was replaying the video from her birthday. As she watched closely, her stomach turned. On the tape, she saw the shadowy figure blowing out her candles. Just then, she heard footsteps echoing nearby. She turned, only to be confronted by a monstrous entity wielding an axe, advancing toward her with murderous intent. Heather's terrified screams rang through the house, enraging the spirit, but also saving her father, whose life hung by a thread in the other room. Her cries became the desperate warning that pulled Jack back from death's grasp. After experiencing the terror firsthand, Jack finally believed what his family had been trying to tell him. Desperate, Jack made the haunting public, sharing the story through the media. His family quickly became infamous, and with the unwanted attention came an escalation of the supernatural attacks tormenting their home. Father Gordon soon visited the Smurl residence himself. The moment he stepped inside, he sensed the overwhelming presence of a malevolent spirit. Shaken by what he felt, he returned to the church and pleaded for greater support to protect the family. But the darkness did not remain confined to the Smurl home. Before long, Father Gordon himself was targeted. The demonic entity unleashed its tricks and illusions, overwhelming the priest. In a battle of faith and deception, Gordon struggled valiantly, but in the end, he was defeated. Deceived and overpowered by the demon's cunning, Father Gordon fell, claimed as the next victim of the malevolent force. News of Father Gordon's death soon reached Ed and Lorraine. Together, they attended his funeral to pay their final respects. At the cemetery, the atmosphere was heavy with grief. Judy, deeply shaken by Gordon's passing, approached the coffin with trembling hands. As she touched the casket, a powerful vision surged through her mind, an extraordinary glimpse into the circumstances surrounding his death. Confused and overwhelmed, she turned to Father Ziegler and asked, where had Father Gordon died? With a solemn voice, he revealed the truth. Father Gordon's death had occurred in Pennsylvania. One day, Lauren tried to calm herself by tidying the house and washing the dishes, but her peace was shattered when she noticed something unusual clogging the sink. It was Judy's pendant. As she reached for it, a surge of water mixed with blood gushed out from the drain, splattering across the basin. Horrified by the vision, Lauren immediately tried to call Judy. But by then, Judy had already gone to Jack's residence. Furious at her daughter's recklessness, Lauren confronted Judy for acting without caution. Judy defended herself, saying she had felt a calling that drew her there. At Jack's house, Lauren and Judy explored room by room, the oppressive presence of something sinister growing stronger, where the aura of evil was nearly overwhelming. She explained that the house had once been the site of a brutal murder, and the restless spirits of that tragedy were tormenting the family. Yet Lauren's instincts told her something more. A darker and far more powerful force was lurking behind these apparitions, manipulating everything from the shadows. Inside Jack's house, Judy suddenly heard her mother's voice calling her to come upstairs. When she obeyed, she was shocked to find the shattered mirror. Compelled by a strange force, Judy reached out and touched the mirror. In that instant, she was shown a chilling revelation. It was Annabelle who had lured her to Jack's home. As Judy descended the staircase, she was ambushed. Annabelle's presence grew stronger, and the cursed doll manifested its form with terrifying clarity, tormenting her directly. Overcome with fear, Judy stumbled and fell, trembling in horror. Lauren rushed to her daughter's side and held her close. Through frightened gasps, Judy told her mother what she had seen, that upstairs lay a mirror of immense evil. Hearing Judy's account only confirmed her fears. Without hesitation, Lauren climbed to the upper floor of Jack's home, and there it was, the cursed mirror, perfectly intact. It was the same mirror Ed and Lorraine had encountered 22 years ago, on the day of Judy's birth. Back then, they had left the tragedy behind, never knowing what truly became of Victoria after that dreadful day. Ed and Lorraine had tried to bury the memory, to abandon the darkness that clung to the object. But this time was different. There would be no running, no turning away. Together, Ed and Lorraine knew they had to face the evil once and for all. The cursed mirror had returned, and they were determined to destroy it. At the same time, Judy's condition suddenly deteriorated. Her health dropped sharply, leaving her weak and unstable. Despite their fear for her, Ed and Lorraine pressed forward. They knew the cursed mirror had to be dealt with. Together with Jack, Ed prepared for the ritual cleansing. They fastened the massive mirror with heavy straps, intending to carry it away from the house and finally rid the family of its evil. But in the midst of their efforts, disaster struck. The straps suddenly snapped loose. Panic filled the room as Jack's eyes locked onto the glass. Reflected within it was a grotesque and horrifying figure staring back at him. Shocked and frozen in terror, he stumbled and fell, narrowly escaping being crushed by the towering mirror as it came crashing down. Outside the house, Tony prepared himself to help carry the cursed mirror, but before he could reach it, a horrifying entity appeared, trying to stop him in his tracks. Summoning all his courage and strength of heart, Tony pushed forward, refusing to give in to fear, and made his way toward Jack's home. Inside, Lauren stayed close to Judy, but in a sudden and terrifying turn, Judy was overtaken by possession. Her body stiffened, her eyes darkened, and the entity seized full control. In a violent burst, she shoved Lauren down into the basement, leaving her unconscious. Ed, witnessing his daughter consumed by the spirit, desperately tried to reach her. He called out and attempted to calm her, but the stress overwhelmed him, triggering a sudden heart attack. Possessed and unaware, Judy lashed out at his father, striking him as he collapsed. Meanwhile, Lauren regained consciousness in the basement. As she climbed up, she realized the demon's deception was now turning toward her, trying to take her soul. Just as the dark force prepared to claim her, a surge of strength entered the room. Tony arrived in time, bursting in with fierce determination, saving Lauren from being consumed by the demon's trap. It was then revealed that the true target of the demonic force had always been Judy. The entity sought to claim her body as its vessel. The horrifying truth struck the family as they watched helplessly. Moments later, Tony saw Judy attempt to take her own life, climbing to hang herself under the demon's influence. With every ounce of strength, he rushed to save her, desperately fighting to cut her down. But by the time he reached her, Judy had already gone still. Her breath was gone. Ed and Tony worked frantically, struggling to revive her, their grief pouring out as every attempt seemed to fail. Overcome with anguish, Lauren fell to her knees and prayed with all her heart, pleading to God to return her daughter's soul. And then, in a moment of divine mercy, the miracle came. Judy gasped, her chest rising as breath returned to her body. Life flowed back into her for the second time, but the demon was not yet finished. Still thirsting for blood, it turned its wrath upon Tony, determined to claim him as its next victim. With sheer force and relentless strength, it dragged him into its clutches. Ed fought with everything he had, straining his weakened body to pull Tony back from the entity's grasp. Meanwhile, Lauren and Judy stood firm, refusing to flee any longer. Together, mother and daughter confronted the evil head-on, their faith and courage burning brighter than their fear. With the combined determination of all three, Ed, Lauren, and Judy, the demon's grip finally loosened. Tony was freed, collapsing into safety as the family's united strength forced the entity back. Their unwavering belief and defiance broke its hold, and the cursed mirror's rage began to subside. In the aftermath, Ed and Lauren secured the mirror, transporting it to the same hidden place where they kept other cursed relics from their past investigations. It was the final chapter of this harrowing battle, a closing of one of the most dangerous cases they had ever faced. The film ends with a quiet yet hopeful scene. Tony and Judy standing together at the altar, finally joined in marriage, a symbol of love and survival after their family's long struggle against the darkness.